Welcome to We Politics. I'm Rob Miller. Today's guest is Matt Marchand, who's running for mayor of Windsor. Matt Marchand stepped down after 6 years as president of the Windsor-Essex County Regional Chamber of Commerce to run for mayor. Before that, he served 8 years as the director of government affairs for the Continental Rail Gateway, and also spent 12 years as a staff member and advisor for Windsor Mayor Mike Hurst. He has degrees in business administration and commerce from the University of Windsor, and he's a graduate of the London School of Economics. Matt, thank you for being here today.
Thanks, Rob. Thanks for having me on the show.
Let's start with, why do you want to be mayor?
Well, the status quo isn't working. If you look around in our community, we've got a downtown that's not functioning. We've got an opioid crisis, we've got a meth crisis, we've got a homeless problem, we've got high poverty rates. The status quo really isn't working here in our community. We need work on transparency and accountability. We have basement flooding. We've got problems with our roads. So there's a lot of work to be done. And our campaign is about bringing the community together, because our community is divided. Our campaign is about bringing the community together. I've got business, labor, and technology co-chairs from our campaign. One of the first times in history, I think, not just here in Windsor, but you find across Ontario, when was the last time you saw business, labor, and technology co-chairs coming around one candidate to bring the community together to get the change we need to drive our community? So that's why I'm running for mayor.
You've released a number of platform planks. What are your priorities? Boil it down for me.
So a couple of the priorities is first of all, our Windsor 2022 strategy, and that's our strategy that's been well received in our community to deal with homeless, the crystal meth epidemic, the opioid crisis in Windsor, the homeless problem, the mental health issues plaguing our community. That is a flagship document for our campaign. It's a strategy and roadmap to get our downtown back. And of course, it's not just downtown, it kind of filters out into the community. So we can deal with that, get that problem solved, fix our downtown. That's one. Two, transparency and accountability. Bring in an auditor general. Three, we want to deal with flooded basements and roads. That's, again, a big problem. Our infrastructure is in decay. So those are some of the top three things. But the final thing that we're talking about is community livability. We put out a $50 million community livability fund to make our community more livable, whether it's bike lanes, improving community centers. There's lots of opportunity on the waterfront. You know, I look at what's going on in Detroit on their waterfront. They've got lots going on downtown for kids to do, for families to do. And our waterfront could use some work there, but it's not just there, elsewhere in the community as well.
Talk to me about Auditor General. Do the people even care about it on the doorstep?
Yes, in fact, they do. And I think what they also care about is transparency and accountability. In knocking on doors, we've knocked on a lot of doors. It comes up all the time. They want transparency, they want accountability. And it permeates a lot of different things. They want to make sure that decisions are being made transparently, that they were included, that everything was looked at. And that, to me, in our campaign, has been one of the fundamental pieces of our campaign. Transparency, accountability in general, but also having an auditor general. Value for money audits to make sure that taxpayers' money is being spent wisely. And the only way you can do it under the legislation, you can go hire an organization to do it, then they're restricted in what they can do. You bring in an auditor general under legislation, they have subpoena power, they can talk to witnesses, they can ensure that taxpayers' money is being spent wisely. And I would point out that in Toronto, they brought in an auditor general. They got, for every dollar they spent on an auditor general, they got $8.50 in return. And that's a good investment in anyone's books.
What are you going to do about crime in the downtown and throughout the city?
Well, yes, and I get back to our flagship document, Windsor 2022. We have a whole section on crime. We talk about not just the police officer thing, which is important, bringing in the provincial weapons unit. Our campaign is told that the government of Ontario is going to increase the provincial weapons unit. It basically means the deployment of 5-6 officers from Toronto. We want those officers to be deployed in Windsor because of the border, because of the gun problem, the crime problem we have here. The other thing we have to do is ensure that we have more police. Right now, we've got a number of police that are off on stress leave and sick leave. a record number right now, 70 or 80, depending on how you measure it. And lastly, we have declined in the number of police officers. 5 years ago, we had 478. Today, we have about 435. So as the crime rate is rising, our police officer presence is declining. And circling back on that, part of the crime thing we have to deal with is getting folks off the street. You know, you see, people that are pushing shopping carts around. We have people that have no place to go. We have people doing drugs and all that downtown. So part of our Windsor 22 strategy is to make sure we get all those pieces together. There's 5 components to it. We get all those pieces together, the law enforcement piece, the homeless piece, the drug piece, the mental health piece, the infrastructure piece. Put it all together in one. We've got 50 recommendations for that. And then we hit that hard. We've already partially funded, but it's really a roadmap for our community to deal with all those pieces together. It's not just the crime here and the homeless there. It's one piece, and we put it together in our document. I would encourage you to see it if you haven't already.
What do you think about the library being sold to the Downtown Mission? We're putting, in my opinion, we're putting all our social problems on the main street of Windsor, which is supposed to be a showcase for the city.
Well, again, I get back to the transparency piece, that people think that decision was made top down. People weren't included in it. There were some large real estate investors that had concerns about that. They just found out about it, the day after it happened. They had some investment that was put at risk. But it speaks to the larger piece. Is the community participating in our city government? And I think what we've heard in our campaign is that no, they're not. And it doesn't matter what sort of area you talk to or group you talk to, that is a fundamental argument that comes out. We weren't consulted, we didn't know about it, decisions are being made from on high, and we, of course, aren't included in that. Which gets to my piece about the status quo. And the status quo isn't working, and we need to make sure that everybody is included in decision making.
How many marijuana stores do you think we should have?
I know the legislation just came out. I know Council dealt with it last night. We have until June, I think it's January 20th to make that judgment. And once hopefully privileged to serve, we'll deal with that after October 22nd. I wouldn't mind an administrative report in advance of that as well.
Do you think Windsor should opt in or opt out?
On the marijuana thing, I think let's have an administrative report first, and then we can make that judgment before January. I think it's January 22nd. I would like a little bit more information on it first.
What did you think of how the parking garage controversy unraveled?
Well, as you know, one of my first news conferences was at the parking garage. And again, it gets back to that transparency piece. The leader of the Downtown Business Association, Larry Horowitz, had to put a FOI request, which is Freedom of Information request for those not in that world, basically asking the city of Windsor, please release the documents that led to your decision on the parking garage not to allow retail. And those documents have not been released. Now, it seems to our campaign, well, they were released, but a lot of them are redacted, but basically the information.
And it cost them.
And it cost them $14,000. They had to do a GoFundMe campaign. Doesn't that strike you as a bit odd that you're a taxpayer? You're paying a lot of money in taxes. You ask the city government to say, share with me the documents that led you to the decision on this parking garage. And the city says no. They fight you for months, if not years, on it. And then they finally say, okay, we'll share it with you, but you got to pay us 12, 14 grand. And then when you finally get the documents, half of them are blacked out or redacted, as they say. Is that transparency to you? I don't think so.
Okay, let's turn the page on free trade.
Yeah.
As we're recording this, there's a tentative NAFTA agreement. Yep. You've had experience with the automotive task forces in Ottawa. What do you think this will do for the city? Well,
I think the big piece is that it eliminates uncertainty. So whether you're a small business, big business, or large business, our largest business partner is in the U.S. 80% of our exports go there. Almost a similar amount come this way. So with that certainty being in place, it allows senior decision makers to go forward and say, okay, now we know what the business climate looks like. Now we know what the tariffs look like or don't look like. Now we can proceed with investment decisions. I can tell you I know a lot of decisions that are based on hold, that are on hold. Now they have a little bit more certainty. My only concern is the steel piece is missing. And that hasn't been resolved yet. I'm not sure where that sits. We'll get more information in the coming days. But we got to resolve that steel piece here. We have some important steel makers here in the Windsor, Essex area, with a lot of employment related to that here in Windsor.
Well, it also affects the parts industry, those
100%.
tariffs.
Yeah.
And even though they're optimistic because of the automotive tariffs coming off, they still don't want to deal with the tariffs.
The steel piece is still missing, so I think by and large we're in good shape, but we had to finish off that steel piece just to make sure that we're in good shape.
In recent days, the mayor has attached you to the disappointments and failures of the Canderel building, the Chrysler headquarters that was built downtown. Did you know you were responsible for a lot of those things?
Well, listen, if I am responsible for bringing a Fortune 500 company downtown Windsor, you know, that's a compliment. But really, that's a little tongue-in-cheek. If folks want to talk about that, listen, I'm happy to talk about that. But my campaign's about the future. We have a Fortune 500 company downtown in Windsor. Was it executed perfectly? No, probably not. Did we learn something from it? Yeah, probably. If some Fortune 500 company came to Windsor right now and said, hey, we'd like to put our headquarters in downtown Windsor, heaven and earth would be moved to make sure that would happen. And I'd also point out, what would our downtown look like without, you know, FCA in downtown Windsor? So it's like anything. There's good and, you know, areas that we can improve on, which is also an important part of our campaign. What we're doing right as a city, what we're doing wrong, and how do we improve on areas that we're doing wrong. A good leader does that.
You have automotive advisors. You have Dino Chiodo, the former president of Local 444. What are they advising you about keeping FCA in Windsor, keeping Ford Motor Company in Windsor? A lot of people think we're going to lose those factories.
Well, bringing the community together and having that united push, what a powerful message it is to have the mayor, the leader of our labor community, the leader of our business community, visiting leaders in the auto sector and say, hey, listen, our community is united. We want you here. Here's what we're prepared to do to keep you here. Isn't that a great message to send? Isn't it? And that's what our campaign is all about. Unleashing the power of our community to generate high-paying manufacturing jobs, to go to and send those messages to the boardrooms where the decision makers are. Here's the mayor, here's the leader of the labor community, here's the leader of our business community. We're here to talk to you about why you need to stay in Windsor. Here's what we can do for you. We're working together to make sure that you stay here. It's a powerful message.
Matt, we've got 1 minute left.
Goes by fast, doesn't it?
Yeah, it goes by fast. Tell the voters why you want to be mayor and why they should elect you.
Well, the status quo in our judgment is not working. If you look at what's going on in our community, our downtown is in crisis. We've got a homeless problem. We have opioid epidemic. We have fewer police officers now than we did 5 years ago. We need transparency and accountability. We also, more importantly, we have to align community spending with community priorities. And that's something that has not been done over the past 4 years. And we're going to be talking about that really, really soon. And in addition to that, of course, we want an auditor general. We also need to shift away from the way things are being done at City Hall. And our campaign is about shifting the overall direction of our community, making sure that the community comes first. And that's what we're going to talk about very, very shortly, maybe as early as very soon.
Matt, thanks for being
with
us.
Thank you. My pleasure. Thanks, Rob.
Today.
Good seeing you.
That's We Politics for today. For more mayoral candidates interviews, tune in to We TV.